I was so relieved that the temperature was finally changing. I can't stand the winter. At one point, I loved the winter, but now it just seems as though it's really annoying. The constant cold always chilling my bones, my natural, unusual low blood pressure, working for me optimally in the summer, but working against me in the winter. The way our house was set up was that on one side of the house was our driveway, and on the other side of the driveway was another building, and then on the other side of the house was an alleyway, like half of a driveway, and our neighbor was on the other side of that. Thank goodness we owned both sides, so we could park our cars in the driveway and also build a dog box so that we could bring our dogs outside. And there I was with my youngest, who was very recalcitrant when it came to potty training. I watched in frustration and growing impatience as my 8-month-old Finnish Spitz spun in figure eights, not being able to make up his mind as to where he wanted to go pee, and then stopping and staring at me. I moan in frustration. Why? Why can't you just choose a spot? To pee, it's not that difficult, Henry. Because this little dog box at the end of her alleyway is naturally covered in darkness, being in between two buildings, you would expect it to be pitch black, but it's not. There's a little bit of reflectivity from the lights in the upstairs in our house, and a tiny cast of moonlight from wherever the moon is shining from. In the very back of her alleyway is the lawn of our neighbor. An old broken down wooden fence acts as a partition. If I stand on the cinder blocks on the edge of the dog box, I can see over into the neighbor's lawn, except for the small section of which the fence is covering, obscuring my view. That's why I can see the squirrels playing in his pear tree in his backyard. That's why I can also see the birds who had been building a nest for what seems like weeks on the edge of the fence that's a partition between his lawn and the lawn of the neighbors next to him. My pup stops and looks up at the fence towards the neighbor's lawn. He does that from time to time, and it's very annoying. I clap my hands and tell him to pay attention and to concentrate on using the bathroom. I have to do this and stand outside with him for about half an hour to an hour because every time I take him back inside, he decides that's the time that he wants to use the bathroom. I figure if we stand out here long enough until he finally goes so I can praise him and give him a treat, he'll do something. He's done it before, but you never know with him. Usually when I clap my hands, his ears will move or I'll get his attention and he'll look back at me with his cute little tongue sticking out of his mouth mischievously. This time he didn't do that. His ears barely moved, as though he were frozen in time. It always creeps me out when animals do that, because it's as though they can see something that you can't. Henry, I snapped my fingers, and as I started walking towards him inside the dog box that was piled high with mulch and bits of dirt, be it lucky us, grass never grew there, I saw my pup flinch at my movement, but he never even turned to acknowledge me. He was still looking in fear or wonder at the fence separating the neighbor's lawn and the dog box. Henry, come on, what are you doing? I said in frustration, and I was getting ready to pick up his little body when something enormous and black walked across my vision. The hair on my pup stood up. It felt as though mine did the same. I froze in terror. I have a vivid imagination, and I always used to imagine what it would feel like to be peering over into the neighbor's dark lawn and to see a bear or a moose or a deer or something strange and demonic passing by. I didn't have to imagine, because my dog also saw it. To be clear, I wasn't exactly sure what I saw, but I knew what it looked like. This monster looked like a large humanoid being, not anything I've ever seen or know to exist, walking on all fours with only the top of its head and humped back and shoulders visible. The fact that its back was visible 2 feet over the fence as it walked right next to it tells me this creature, if it had stood up on its hind legs, would probably have measured up to 8 feet high. Its back was also massive. In the scanty moonlight, I could see the lumpy indentations that its spine created along its gaunt back, as well as the ribcage that appeared to be 3 times larger than that of a normal human man. When I peered at the back of its head, I saw what appeared to be long, oily, or damp gray hairs that hung past my line of vision behind the fence. I could make out its legs through the slats of the wooden fence as it walked, which were long and slender and resembled those of a person. But the way it walked It wasn't human. I caught a glimpse of the reflection of its eyes momentarily, which were only briefly visible when it passed by the gaps in the fence. Then it disappeared behind our house. As soon as it walked out of sight, seeming to not even had seen or detected that my puppy and I were there, and that it could see us if it only had looked through the slats in the fence, I did not hesitate a second longer. I grabbed my puppy, dashed down our alleyway, opened the gate, and didn't even latch it, only to make a sharp right to flee through my front door, to lock it, and immediately made my next mission to tell my boyfriend. Since my boyfriend and I lived on the second floor, I put my puppy down. He ran right upstairs while I ran up right behind him, ironically on all fours. It was the only way I could keep myself from falling. I told my boyfriend what happened, and at first he thought I was screwing around because I have such a vivid imagination, but when he saw the fear in my face and the fact that my puppy's hackles were still raised, he went to check the cameras. We don't have a camera in the back of our property, where this thing was, because technically that was my neighbor's lawn. But my boyfriend figured that, like some people do, taking a shortcut through the neighbor's lawn, it would eventually show up on the next block if it decided to come down this way. Maybe we would see it in the intersection now where one of our cameras was pointing. Both of our cameras were pointing on either side of the block. We also had an older camera that was pointing directly at the cars, but it was near the back of our driveway, facing both of our cars towards the block that we were on. So its back was to the lawn. It would not have seen the monster unless the monster came out in front of our driveway or hopped over the wall that partitioned our driveway from our neighbor's lawn and walked past our cars. We looked and we never saw it. The fact that we couldn't see it made us very concerned. Being morbidly curious, when I took Henry for a walk the next day, I decided to ask around neighbors who I thought had cameras if they saw anything. Surprisingly, many of the neighbors did not, and I encouraged them that they might want to get cameras. There had been a lot of robberies in the area, which was the truth. Some of the neighbors didn't want to talk to me, maybe because of my line of questioning. My first question being, did they see anything suspicious last night? They probably thought I was with the cops. I don't see how personally, but I could understand, since a lot of the neighbors on our block were also into some shady dealings. I really had to question whether or not I saw what I saw. Other than my dog's reaction, I only had myself as a witness, which meant nothing. Is it possible I could have seen a hairless bear, and my mind just put that image together of a long, demonic-looking human thing that walked on all fours? It's quite possible. Even my boyfriend was entertaining the idea after I told him I probably just imagined it. But what made both of us nervous was what we saw in the news. 3 households were attacked, all on different blocks, all on the quiet streets. But it was the way they were attacked. Someone or something broke into their house from their backyards, all 3 of them, killed all of the people inside of their homes, and left, apparently with all their arms and legs and faces. All the victims, older women, men, children, young people, every single one of them had their legs and arms missing, and their faces missing, and pieces of them carved out from their body. My boyfriend and I contemplated whether or not we should tell the cops. He told me not to say anything. Since I didn't have any evidence or any way to prove I saw what I saw, I would become a suspect. I don't know how I would have become a suspect, but he didn't want the unnecessary attention, especially when there's nothing helpful we'd be able to provide for them. It's not like I was going to come out and say there was a monster. I was going to say something along the lines of a man that was walking on all fours that seemed older and had long gray hair. I wasn't going to say that it looked like it was 8 feet high and super huge for a human being, but I heeded my boyfriend's advice. We kept quiet, and when the day came for us to move, we were so happy. I don't know what that thing was, and I never saw it again after that, and I hope I never will again. I just can't help thinking, if we're moving to a place where we want a lot of land and many acres, which has always been my dream, what will we find out there? This creature was in a neighborhood packed with houses and was brazen enough at 9 o'clock at night to waltz around in people's lawns without fear of being seen? What if whatever species it belongs to isn't just here? I had a more paranoid thought. What if it followed us? And if it killed those 3 families that were all in our homes, are we really even safe inside our house?